We've spent a lot of time on research and doing kind of data analytics on this. And we've actually proven that if you play the right music at the right place at the right time with our model, you can unlock increased sales.
Welcome to Digital Hospitality. I'm your host, Shawn Walchef. This is a Cali BBQ media production. We started the show back in 2017 with a deep obsession with restaurants, hospitality, technology, and storytelling. We have been fortunate to interview some of the greatest hospitality thinkers, developers, restaurateurs, owners, operators, over thousands of interviews. And every single time I get to do an interview, I'm more excited because of the global network that we've created. If you're new to the show, welcome. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you've been listening for a long time, we're grateful. We appreciate you. We have Ola Sars. He is the founder and CEO of Soundtrack. We do not talk enough about music in hospitality. And today we get a masterclass. Ola, tell us, first of all, welcome. And second of all, tell us when a restaurant or a hospitality business intentionally designs music as the first thing that you experience when you walk into a venue, what does it look like?
Well, like anything, it's not really any rocket science behind it. It's when you're an entrepreneur building a brand, if it's a restaurant brand, if it's a cafe brand, a bar, or whatever you're building, you're kind of thinking about the whole experience of that brand and what experience that you want to deliver to your customers, right? So there's always this thinking about, I want to be a really cool, kind of progressive brand that has a twist of this type of food or these types of drinks, meeting this type of customer, right? So I want to create that experience where that brand meets that, aspired customer group. So it's the same thing with music. It's one out of many components in that brand experience that needs to play in the same way that the other components of the experience. So the brand name, the food, the chefs, everything plays kind of as a band together to create that holistic experience. So the music kind of has to connect to the brand idea and the entrepreneur's idea of the brand experience. And that idea has to be translated into the soundtrack of that brand. And that's going on every day in every restaurant around the world that's playing music, which is basically 90% of all the restaurants. Entrepreneurs are thinking about, what is the soundtrack of my brand? How do I use music to augment or improve the customer experience and kind of cut through the noise and really deliver a unique brand experience? So that's the theory behind it. And then obviously moving to practice, it's not that easy as it sounds. It's daunting to you when you kind of sit down. Okay, what does my brand sound like? What do I want to deliver? And maybe you get to 10 tracks and then, you spend 2 hours doing that exercise and then you don't know where to go from there. So it's pretty hard to put theory into practice here. But the general idea, I think every entrepreneur understands how they want to kind of use music to enhance the brand experience.
So from all the interviews that I've done over the last decade, what I have learned is that owners, founders, entrepreneurs, they become obsessed with a problem. When did you become obsessed with music as a business problem?
I became obsessed with music, the music business, for starters, 20 years ago when I kind of changed my life and working in other parts of the world and industries that made me more and more cynical, finance and management consulting and stuff like that, and really kind of made a move in my life to work with something that I truly love, which is music. And since then, the last 20 years has been all about building companies within the music industry. And obviously, the last 20 years has been colored by the move into streaming and the kind of digitization of the music industry. So I've been in the forefront of the streaming revolution, if you may, building technologies and services mainly in the consumer space the first 10 years. But the last 10 years, I've been obsessed by understanding the whole equation about what how music can play an important role for brands and how entrepreneurs can use music to build their businesses, improve their businesses. And here we are, 10 years later, where Soundtrack is the global leader within that space, helping entrepreneurs to unlock the power of music for their brands.
I would love for you to share just maybe a lesson or two, either success or failure. We always prefer failure from Beats Music, co-founding Beats Music, acquired by Apple. Now it's Apple Music that we all know. More of the consumer side of the streaming before we get into the business side. Any lessons that you've learned on that end that you've applied now to working with businesses?
I can talk about my mistakes for hours. So not in every sense of the different startups that I made, but I think I have been initially. I was focused on kind of solving the consumer problem and kind of delivering all the music in the world to any consumer, anywhere, anytime, which what is where we are right now with Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and so forth. But building, I would say I'm Swedish, and Spotify is from Sweden, but I actually was one of the co-founders of Beats Music. So I was over in West Coast US working with Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre and that team, building kind of the main
Same.
competitor, which was crazy, but also good because I wasn't as starstruck as the Americans working with these guys. I was like, oh. So I would walk into a room and I'm like, yeah, these guys are dope. I know they're amazing people, but I'm going to help
I'm
them
here to
build out
solve a
the
problem.
service. But as soon as an American walked in the room, they would just like freeze. And then Trent Reznor walks in, and then it's just, nobody's talking. And I'm like, everyone calm down. Let's just build a service. We're going to compete with my Swedish neighbors. And we're not going to call it Daisy, by the way, which was their idea. We're going to call it Beats Music. I told them, like, just sober up and let's just tell the market what they want and let's build a service. That then was Beats Music. We built that out, launched it. Obviously, we were close to crashing a million times. It was very, very tight schedule, very tough prerequisites, but then we were able to get it out. And then Apple was looking at it from the beginning and then obviously acquired the whole business, and the rest is history.
Can you share a story about Jimmy Iovine?
Uh, I mean, there's where do I start? Look. These I learned so much of these power players, and I do intellectually understand that they are close to gods in the U.S.
Yeah.
But for me, it was easy to deal with that because I'm the guy from this weird country up in Northern Europe who doesn't really understand what's going on. So I would treat them as like the same level, which they appreciated, by the way, because it was easier to work with me then. I kind of told them what I was seeing and what I was feeling and what I saw, rather than trying to filter all the time. So I think one great story was like when I was telling them how complex it is to build a music streaming product and all the infrastructure that you need to build and all the licensing. And Jimmy just tells me like, "Oh, just give me Spotify and we'll throw a sticker on it." And then I just like rolled my eyes and, "Oh, I couldn't think of that. Sorry, I'll just go and do that." He was joking somewhat, but he just wanted to get a streaming service out as quick as possible. But it's a pretty complex exercise, as you can understand.
So bring me into soundtrack. I mean, did you get the perfect name for the business? I mean, how is that available?
Well, I mean, I think soundtrack is a really interesting concept, and every brand has a soundtrack. I think even in our private lives, every era or our upbringing or different, you guys go to college and you have the soundtrack of your college, and
Yep.
so the soundtrack is a really nice word to kind of describe what I was trying to build and unlock for the business market. So what that then represents is obviously it comes from the film industry, but a soundtrack of a film really kind of describes, a curated experience in a specific sequence that unlocks different types of emotions and kind of augments emotions through a film. It as an entrepreneur of a hospitality business, you would probably want to think about it in the same way. Your business is kind of a TV show or is kind of close to a movie. You want to take the customers through an experience over time and unlock experiences within that experience throughout. Kind of consuming your brand, so to speak. So I think it's a really good analogy and it's a really good word. And obviously everyone understands it on a global scale, the soundtrack of your brand or the soundtrack of your restaurant. So we just went for it and nobody had really used it in the context of this.
It's brilliant. I would love to go back. So we opened up our restaurants in 2008. 2008 was the beginning of really, the web 2.0. I referenced the iPhone coming out in July 29th or June 29th, 2007. We've built our restaurants on top of what are now all these apps, but understanding as a restaurant owner back in 2008, thinking about music in my restaurant and in my venue to where we are today in 2026, how much technology has changed, how much streaming has changed. But what hasn't changed, which is something that I'm sure one of the goals of Soundtrack is to educate business owners, is licensing rights. Can you tell us from your perspective, what are the things that restaurant owners, hospitality professionals are not understanding about licensing rights, BMI, ASCAP? Those are all things that I learned along the way as an entrepreneur that got the fine or got the letter in the mail and said, wait, how much do they want us to pay? I don't understand. Why do we have to pay that? Can you explain that for us?
Right. I'll take the liberty of kind of going back one more step before. So when I was building consumer services, I realized that a bunch of businesses were coming onto the Beats Music platform. And obviously, we weren't licensed as a service for commercial use. And I didn't know anything about background music or kind of music for business back then. I was completely focused on the consumer markets. Though, and then I started realizing that there were a bunch of businesses coming on board all the time. And then I spoke to my fellow Swedes at Spotify, Daniel, who's the founder over there, and they also had this notion that businesses were coming on board, and it was kind of a problem because it wasn't just 10 businesses, it was like hundreds of thousands of businesses. Basically, I would use the analogy of people coming to Netflix and opening up cinemas with Netflix. So, so
That's a good
that's
analogy. That's a good analogy.
Hollywood would not let that fly,
Yes.
So obviously, so it was a problem. It's nothing that we would want. Then after seeing thousands and thousands of businesses entering our platform, talking to some of the brands that Jimmy would send me to meet up with in order to kind of find distribution synergies and stuff, I realized there was this play and this, bigger opportunity out there in the physical world with brands and businesses that like, hey, every brand has a soundtrack. Hey, every business wants to understand how to use music in order to improve their experience. So, and then I checked and nobody had licensed a music streaming service for commercial use yet. So it started like from basically the market shoving it through my throat or through my mouth and telling me, hey, there's a big desire for a music streaming service licensed for business. So that was kind of the initial aha moment for me. I moved back home to Sweden and I went to Daniel and Martin, founders of Spotify. I said, hey, I think there's a play outside of the consumer industry into B2B. And so I founded the company with Spotify as my co-investor. And
Wow.
it was kind of initially the product was called Spotify Business, actually. And we were testing it up here in the middle of nowhere in Sweden and Norway and Finland to see if there was kind of a market. And lo and behold, there was a market for music streaming for businesses. So quickly, I kind of took the next step and moved into Soundtrack as an independent brand and product, rolling it out worldwide. So coming to your question, that kind of puts it in the context of that none of these consumer streaming services, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Tidal, these are
Pandora.
brands, they're not licensed for commercial use. But as an entrepreneur running a restaurant, and I used to be a bartender back in the days as well, I knew how important it was. And I knew that if I was at work, I really needed to have the full spectrum of all the music and being able to kind of create your own playlist and really, deliver the best music experience there possibly could be. And streaming was kind of, and the revolution of streaming enabled a user to have all the music in the world at your fingertips. And it was just daunting on me. Imagine if a brand could have all the music in the world at their fingertips and actually create the soundtrack of their brand. So that's where it started. It started with a legal challenge when
Yeah.
we were on the consumer side. So I decided to build it. There's a whole different product logic as well that I can speak to later. That like a streaming service for businesses looks completely different than a streaming service for consumers. But to your question about licensing, then on top of the actual service being licensed for commercial use, you also have to pay what in the US is referred to as the PRO. So the four big ones in the US are ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and GMAR.
Hmm.
They all operate independently for some reason. This is before we were born, maybe. Um, Not really, but that's what it looks like today. So if you're a business, which everyone on this podcast painfully knows, they'll call you and they'll tell you that you have to license them for the public performance, but there's no synchronization between them. So one
Correct.
day BMI will call you, the next day ASCAP will call you, but the problem is they don't even know what's being played or what service you're using. So they don't know if you're playing their repertoire or not. So it's completely broken the system. So what we did then to make it easier for the entrepreneur so that she can actually do the right thing and cover all the licenses that she wants to cover when playing music in her restaurant, we created a licensed service where we license with the labels and the publishers for the actual service side of the licensing, which also kind of clears out the fact that everything that you're playing is fully licensed, and your buddy who's an artist, she's getting paid when
Hmm.
her track is played. And I think that's just like a rudimentary level that had not even been achieved in the US. This is the first time you get all the licensing packaged and you have the guarantee that when you play a track, it's actually reimbursed correctly to the music creator at the end, which should, sounds pretty logical to a normal person, right? But that's that's how the music industry rolls. It's just a very dysfunctional place. So in short, you get a service like Soundtrack, you got all the licenses in place. You know that you're doing the right thing for your buddy who's a music creator.
I mean, it brings back honestly PTSD of getting different letters in the mail at our restaurant and realizing I didn't know who ASCAP was. And then talking to, my business partner, Eric, and saying, why do we have to pay this? Like, where are we going to get the money to pay this? And then getting, 6 months later, something from BMI and
Yeah.
understanding, like, I don't understand why are these why are these organizations not talking to each other? And then what's a small business owner, restaurateur supposed to do if they don't have, and this was before I had ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini to help me, understand these types of issues.
Yeah. I mean, it's for me as a industry veteran. It took me a long time to figure out what I can't believe this. Like, is it this complex? I mean, these poor entrepreneurs have other problems to solve. They got to pay rent, they got to pay staff, they got to see to it that every day, they deliver the tables. So just I think we're doing something good for the industry by simplifying it, making it easy to do the right thing at the same time as we're providing an awesome service for people to soundtrack their brands.
Can you talk about Dayparts? One of the things that all the owners, operators listening to this podcast, watching this podcast will know, our staff will want to listen to different music than maybe the brand wants our customers to listen to. And what we play on Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. might be different than what we want for our dinner time vibe at Friday at 5 p.m. Can you talk about how Soundtrack helps us improve those efficiencies, but more importantly, create the ambiance that helps us drive better business?
Sure. So the equation for music in business, let's just talk about music and hospitality today for the sake of this, isn't more complicated than delivering the right music to the right place at the right time for your brand. So that's kind of the problem that our product serves. So in the US, 92% of our businesses are small businesses and 42% are restaurants. So we're really right in the sweet spot of I think, the audience today. And so day parts are a central part of the use case for a business because you all know, you entrepreneurs out there running a restaurant or a cafe or whatever you're running, know that Monday morning looks different than Friday after work, and everything in between. So it's all about kind of following the tempo of the business and delivering the right level of energy and experience throughout the whole work week, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So day parting is a core component. First of all, though, you have to figure out, what does my brand sound like? So the first
Mm,
exercise is the equation of, what's the soundtrack of my brand? And I'll talk to that, if it's okay, Shawn, just for
please. I would
what's the
love that.
first sequence in kind of solving the problem for you as an entrepreneur. So usually you sit down with your business partner or whatever, and you talk about, what kind of experience do we want to deliver, what's our brand, what are we going to be, and then you come to the exercise of music, hopefully quite quickly, which can help you, by the way, in all aspects of what kind of brand experience you want to deliver, because music is a good kind of interpreter, or kind of a good signal for what you want to be. But I think my recommendation is always to try to get to sitting down and getting to maybe 10 to 20 tracks that actually represent your brand as a sample, or I would call it like a brand DNA sample of what it is that you want to sound like. So that then would represent the the overall, what our brand sounds like. What you can do with that on the soundtrack platform, you can obviously import those 20 tracks to our platform, and we would augment that, meaning that we would kind of provide a full 700, 800 track library that's
Wow.
according to your brand. So that would then provide you with the first brand sound. That's the first step. And then the next step is understanding, okay, you might have multiple locations in multiple regions, right? You might even have an international business. So your soundtrack might be a little bit different in New York than it is in LA, and then it is in Chicago or Miami, depending on kind of the profile of that specific location. So then you need to think about, okay, the right music is the first step. What's my soundtrack? At the right place, meaning, do we have different profiles of our different locations at the
Hmm.
right time? Then coming to your question about sequencing, so then you need to talk with your partner, or kind of work out the actual schedule of your week, the tempo, and then you can kind of break down the soundtrack into playlists for different day parts throughout the week. So let's say you have a lunch playlist that's on soundtrack within kind of the realms of the soundtrack that you define. You have a high energy evening playlist. You have a breakfast playlist if you're running breakfast and so forth. So you kind of break up the soundtrack into sub soundtracks, and then you put them into the right scheduling zones throughout the week, and that then creates the whole music schedule for your brand over the week. A quite extensive exercise. So you can imagine doing that once, and then you got to sit down and update
Hmm.
it every week, maybe, if you're ambitious as an entrepreneur, which you usually are. So then you realize that I don't have all this time. This is just like a very extensive workload. Then I think we built a product that can really help you. You can basically use the soundtrack platform to do all these things automated through our AI. You can use our AI to create that soundtrack initially, if you like. You don't even have to pick those 20 tracks. You can write a prompt if you like. We're really, progressive New York steakhouse
Mm.
that, are serving 30 to 50-year affluent New Yorkers. And we like artists like XYZ, and then we would create that soundtrack for you, so that we can help you with that. But then you can also create a schedule based on that. So the actual service creates a schedule for you that then would kind of put it into those time schedules over the week. You can also, if you're kind of more lean back, you can pick a pre-made, like, um, playlist, or actually a pre-made music schedule as well. So there will be one for any type of use case. Steakhouse New York, there's probably one that we created for you, a schedule already that you can just press play, lean back, go sell some steaks, and leave it there until you kind of close the business in 20 years, and it will update itself according to the kind of rules of that specific schedule.
When you look, I noticed on your Instagram that you have significant market penetration in Chicago and Manhattan. When you look at where you sit now and how you guys are a global company and rolling out across the United States, do you have any stories or lessons of customers that found Soundtrack and realized how important, by working with you, maybe something that they had neglected with music, how music became much more predominant in the hospitality that they were providing and the success that came because of it?
Yeah, I have so many stories. I spend a lot of time in the US, and I don't want to point any fingers on any specific brands, so I'll just keep it kind of general.
Sure.
But so I mean, if you look at New York, for example, Manhattan, which is kind of an indicator if you're getting somewhere, I think in the U.S.
If you can
Just
make it in New York, you
as
can
an
make it anywhere.
example, as a stupid Swedish guy, I can say that. So
No,
everyone
no,
else who kind
it
of
checks out. It checks
rolling their
out.
eyes on the podcast, just he's a European, so whatever.
No, no, it checks out. It checks out.
Yeah.
We spend lots of time in New York, and New York's got a special energy to it for sure.
Yeah, but no, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying for when you build a business and you're trying to get somewhere in the U.S., there's like a couple of spots where you see if you're actually having some success. And right now, we're all over Manhattan. It's like
Yep,
crazy.
it's awesome.
So which is a good sign. So the story is like in the beginning, and still I walk around when I go to any city in the world. I walk around, I walk in, and I talk to entrepreneurs, and I talk to like, okay, I hear you guys are playing this and this. What are you guys using? How do you work with music? And I always talk to them about this. So I have a bunch of stories when I walked into businesses in the US in the beginning, and I hear like Spotify free advertising. So one was I was in a really cool kind of midtown bar,
Hmm.
and I'm not gonna, and everyone here would know if who's been like kind of out bar hopping in New York would know about it. And I was there with some what I thought were some cool guys and girls, and having a good night out. And right in the middle of us ordering some fancy drinks, like the advertising goes on for some insurance company uh,
Stop it.
in the background. Like,
No.
if you guys are working on your 502 whatever it is, like, and it's like we have the specific offer now for you only this week. Go to
Oh
blah blah
my God.
blah.com, and we're like, am I the only one hearing this? And they're like, no, we're hearing it. We're hearing it. And I
It's
look at
like
the
playing.
bartender.
It's
I'm
like
like, what's
playing
going
radio.
on? What's going
It's
on? What are you going
terrible.
to charge me for this drink? And so that's just, a general anecdote where you realize that, I mean, come on, you're probably paying millions of dollars for the interior. You're training
Yeah.
your staff. You're getting people from the best schools and training to kind of lead your bar. Every detail is there that matters. And then somebody's playing Spotify free in the background with advertising. And that's where, like, I feel I get up in the morning that I'm actually fixing. I'm not solving cancer,
Yeah.
but I am fixing like an opportunity for these entrepreneurs to actually, because everybody knows if you do it the right way, it will help you build your business. And kind of segueing into what really drives me about this is that we've spent a lot of time on research and doing kind of data analytics on this, and we've actually proven that if you play the right music at the right place at the right time with our model, you can unlock increased sales. We work with one of the biggest hamburger chains in the world, and the biggest statistical experiment ever in this space, and we proved 9% sales increase by applying our simple method.
It's incredible.
9% is a lot of money for a big
9% is
hamburger
a lot of
chain.
money, for sure.
Yeah.
5 years from now, when you walk into a great restaurant, what will it sound like?
5 years from now, hopefully, we'll have millions and millions of businesses. We're getting there around the world. And we'll empower these business owners and these entrepreneurs with the power to truly develop a connection between the customer and the brand in real time. And I don't even think it's going to take us 5 years. I think it's probably 1, 2 years away. Meaning that when you walk in, the system will know who's in there. The system will adopt the soundscape to the people that are in there, the vibe, the weather outside. If the US won their World Cup game or lost their World Cup game the day before, um, what the kind of vibe in the city is just this week. and truly build a connection in real time over time that unlocks kind of a collective happiness and drive to consume inside of that brand experience, and obviously maximize the return for the business owner. That's why we're there. We're there to help you as an entrepreneur sell more drinks, sell more steaks, more burgers, nothing else. But the good news about that is if we work together on that, and by the way, the customer is there, so she's happy to spend. You know, why waste that opportunity? I walked into the door. I'm ready to have some fun, enjoy some great food, have a good experience. Maximize that opportunity when you have someone there. Use music to unlock the value. And the good news about it is, whilst doing so, you're also unlocking kind of a connection between that value in the music industry and the music creators. That you're actually seeing that music, or sorry, that the money that you're spending on that service, which isn't a lot, by the way. Our service costs $35 per month per location, or
Wow.
$50 per month, with all these licenses included.
It's
You can
incredible.
compare that to what you're paying to one of these PROs per year, and
That's
you're probably the
that's
same.
less. I already that's less than what I remember back in 2012 looking at those bills. Like that's incredible.
Yeah,
Incredible value.
and the best part is like we're actually, you know, sending the royalties to the correct, music creator.
Mm.
So there's this kind of sympathetic interchange here. Yes, I take a small cut of building the product and taking the risk to do so, but I do distribute more than I keep to the music industry, and I think I come with a fair price to the music, to the hospitality entrepreneur, or whatever type of entrepreneur that's using my service.
It's incredible. Ola, I appreciate you taking the time. Is there one question that I didn't ask you that you think our audience should know?
If there's one question that I think one thing that's really important in building, specifically in hospitality, is staff and your team that you're building. Because your team is obviously the representation of your brand. I would say that's probably the most important kind of interface with your customer, right? So not only do you have with music, do you have the opportunity to connect with the end consumer, you also have to have the team in front of you, and think about the team and how you use music to make them more motivated, in a great mood, feel engaged. Also, you can have them in the system. You can give them limited rights to choose playlists within kind of your brand sound and within that specific day part. You can have them collaborate around playlisting, which creates this opportunity for team building, adding energy, getting to work, and kind of really giving it your best. So I think just as important as the end consumer, you should think about your team's role and how what role they play in kind of the music
Can they
industry.
create opening playlists, opening soundtracks so that when they're opening the restaurant and closing the restaurant, it's playing different music that is approved?
You can do anything you want. You
Phenomenal.
can have like an hour when the team, before you open, when the
Yep.
team has a shared playlist to just
Yep.
have fun and
That's awesome.
energize. You can also have during, if there's a bartender that has a great relationship with the crowd, it's like, Johnny's hour. This is Johnny's tracks, and it's always on Thursday, and he's got really fun. Like you can just like, sky's the limit. Use it as a tool to engage with your team and help them engage with your customers, and create a shared experience that maximizes value in your hospitality business.
If you guys are watching, if you're listening, if you run restaurants, you obviously know how important it is to build culture in restaurants, to create an environment where our team members feel safe, secure, energized, ready to take care of our team. Soundtrack, what an amazing way. Great way to end the interview. Ola, I can't wait to come to Sweden one day. One day I will be there. I'll come see some restaurants, but when I see you in the United States, I can't wait for that, or to meet any of your team members. If anyone wants to learn more, where's the best place for them to go?
You should go to soundtrack.io. You can read anything about the service, or you can just use the knowledge base there to learn about music and business, how to use it. I'm not telling you that you have to use Soundtrack, but do use a licensed service if you're going to do it.
Amazing. We appreciate you guys for watching, for listening. We do Rising Tides Live. That is our live show every Wednesday, every Friday. You can go to betheshow.media/rising tides to learn more. Please check out Soundtrack. If you're using Soundtrack and you're listening to this podcast, we want to hear your story. So please send me a message. Instagram's the fastest, at Shawn P. Walchef, or LinkedIn. We would love to hear your Soundtrack story, how you use music to increase your hospitality at your venue. Ola, this has been awesome. We appreciate your time. As always, stay curious, get involved, and don't be afraid to ask for help. We'll catch you guys next episode. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you've made it this long, you are part of the community. You're part of the tribe. We can't do this alone. We started, no one was listening. Now we have a community of digital hospitality leaders all over the globe. Please check out our new series called Restaurant Technology Substack. It's a Substack newsletter. It's free. It's some of our deep work on the best technology for restaurants. Also, go to YouTube and subscribe to Cali Barbecue Media. Cali BBQ Media on YouTube. We've been putting out a lot of new original content. Hopefully you guys like that content. If you want to work with us, go to betheshow.media. We show up all over the United States, some international countries. We would love to work with you and your growing brand on digital storytelling. You can reach out to me anytime at Shawn P. Walchef on Instagram. I'm weirdly available. Stay curious, get involved, and don't be afraid to ask for help. We'll catch you next episode.